Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good. So we have a guest speaker today. His name is Joseph Jutan, and he's responsible as part of the staff for the career advisor at the Career and Talent Development Center. So I'll pass the baton to him, and he'll be presenting today tips for resume writing. So take it away, Joseph.
Awesome. Thank you, Alejandro. And just like Alejandro said, Joseph Jutan, career advisor with the Career and Talent Development Department. So I'm actually the career advisor for engineering students. So if hopefully all of you guys are engineering students. If you aren't, it's fine. But if you are, I would be your assigned advisor. And like Alejandro said, today we're going to be talking about resume and cover letter writing to kind of give you guys some tips on how to format your resume, how to stand out. So there's some details of when it comes to formatting that document as well as the cover letter. So unfortunately, I don't have a co-host with me today, meaning another career advisor. So I'm going to try my best to focus on the presentation. And if any of you guys have any questions or anything, just feel free to drop that in the chat or interrupt me on your mic. I don't, either way is fine for me. But I'll be looking at both if you guys have questions. Okay, so we're going to jump into it. This is actually our newsletter. Hopefully you guys have seen it. It goes out twice a month, and it usually has upcoming jobs, upcoming events, workshops, and then of course the most up-to-date job or internship postings. So if you guys, check your FIU email, definitely look out for it because we usually put, very, I would say important stuff or really relevant engineering specific opportunities in the newsletter. So resume writing. So don't judge a book by its cover. That's really what a resume is. It's supposed to be an invitation to have a deeper conversation with an employer and ideally in an interview. So sometimes I get students who get very laser focused on the resume, which is not bad, but which you'll see in a couple of slides, but you don't want to have it be something that just takes over your whole job or internship search, just kind of nitpicking the resume. It's going to come a point where the resume is going to be as good as it's going to get. And once it gets to that point, changes aren't really going to make much of a difference at that point. So usually I want to urge students, once you get to that industry standard format, focus more so on the job search, the internship search, the interviewing skills, and don't get too, caught up into perfecting a resume. Because if you come to me for a resume review and you go to one of my colleagues for a resume review, you're always going to hear a slightly different version. Everyone's different, but just to kind of throw that in there. Some learning objectives for today: purpose and intention of a resume, cover letter, style, formatting, components. We're going to go through all of that in depth. I always like to start our workshops with these career readiness competencies. So this is NACE, National Association of Colleges and Employers, and it's basically an organization that was formed in partnership with industry and higher ed to identify the top skills or the top 7 skills that employers look for. And the thing with these skills is what we would call transferable or soft skills. And these are relevant for entry-level jobs. That's the most important part, entry-level, and for internships. And transferable or soft skills means you could have any type of experience, whether it's work experience, volunteer work. Let's say you worked retail, you worked at Marshall's, and you demonstrated effective teamwork, communication skills, whatever in that position. An engineer and employer, or the way you word these skills or the way you infuse these skills onto your resume is going to tell an employer that you're going to bring that same teamwork or problem solving skill into a technical or into an engineering type of position. So just hope you guys see the connection there. But what do you think, if you guys could, unmute your mic or you could type it in the chat box, what do you think the number one skill that employers look for? The number one skill.
Teamwork.
Teamwork is really important for engineering students. It's top 3, but that's not the number one skill that
Maybe
they look for.
problem solving?
Yeah, Rocio, it's exactly right. It is problem solving. And the main reason why it is critical thinking or problem solving is mostly if you are going into the private sector, if you're going into industry, at the end of the day, it's all about dollars and cents, stock prices, shares, pleasing investors. So if you can position yourself, at least on the resume, as results driven, numbers driven, or outcomes driven, that's always going to, or problem solver, that's going to really help set you apart from other candidates. So number 1 was critical thinking, professionalism, work ethic 2, teamwork, just so you guys can kind of see below here. All very important, but just to give you some context there about what the number one or the top 3 skills that they look for. I'm not going to spend too long on this just because I think they're pretty straightforward. But yeah, critical thinking, problem solving, communication skills. And this one, number 2, is specifically the written communication skills. So the formatting, the grammar, the spelling, the way you organize your different sections, that's really going to be important for this competency. Teamwork, collaboration, basically, as it says, working with others, digital technology. So that's using different software to accomplish tasks. So if you are, let's say, mechanical, that might be something like AutoCAD, or if you're a different major, specific software depending on the industry and depending on the position. And of course, stuff like Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, all that stuff. Leadership, so being able to not only lead, but also to work, follow when you need to. So being able to take that leadership role when you need to, and being able to be a follower or follow someone in a leadership position. Work ethic, so whatever your personal work ethic is, or whatever that employer designates as good work ethic. Career management, that kind of plays into the resume writing today, and more so in terms of not only the way you word the bullet points, but when it comes to interviewing, how effectively you sell your skills and your experiences to that employer. And then the last one, global intercultural fluency, working well with others from different backgrounds, races, all that stuff. All right, so just a quick overview of the NACE career readiness competencies. So what is a resume? So as I have it here, I have a brief written account of personal, educational, and professional qualifications and experience. And I have that word brief underlined. It doesn't need to be brief per se. Usually for most students, one industry standard 1-page resume is going to be enough. But if you've done enough things, or you've had enough experiences where you have 2 pages or 1.5 pages, that's completely fine as well. The only thing which I'm going to talk about, further on in the workshop, is you really want to be using effective use of the space on the resume. So if you have a 3-page resume, but if you change up the font size, the spacing, the order of the different sections, it could be 1 page. That's when I'm recommending you keep it to 1 page. You don't want to overwhelm the recruiter or the employer with unnecessary pages when you don't have to. And then the purpose of the resume to be used as a professional marketing tool, that's really what it is. It's your professional representation on paper to prove you're qualified for the job. So not sure if you guys know, but if you are applying for 5 positions, 10 positions, 15 positions, it's always going to be 5, 10, 15 different resumes specific for the position you're applying for. And I'll kind of talk about that as well, why you should be doing that. You can have a master resume with a history of everything you've ever done, but for each position you apply for, you need to tailor the master resume for that specific position you're applying for. To demonstrate the communication skills, again, written communication skills. Oral communication skills are more so going to be at stuff like networking events, career fairs, and interviews. To prove you understand the working world. So the way you word that resume, the way you format everything, the way you word those bullet points, that's going to tell the recruiter that you understand the industry that you're in, and it's always going to put you at an advantage compared to someone else. To demonstrate your knowledge, skills, abilities, interests, passions, and at the end of the day, is to secure an interview. So as I mentioned earlier just now, you don't want to get too crazy with the resume where it's as good as it's going to get, and every critique you get after that is just nitpicking. Because once you get the call back for the interview, it's more so how you're going to sell all that information that you have written on your resume, and even more to the recruiter in a verbal interview. So how long do you think, if you went to a networking event, or you went to a career fair, or even if you just applied for a position online, how long do you think that recruiter is going to look at that resume for? With all the time you put into it, critique after critique, making sure it's as good as it's going to get, how long do you think the recruiter is going to look at the resume for?
Is it like 5 seconds?
Wait, say again?
Go Alejandro, because I think I talked.
Yeah, I think 15 to 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's about 6 to 8 seconds. I mean, that's kind of slightly exaggerated, if I'm being honest, but it's not that long. And the reason why is because recruiters, that's what they do for a living, fill internships and full-time jobs. So they see resumes all day, every day. So if a regular person were to look at a resume and just kind of read through everything, it would maybe take them 5 minutes. An equivalent time for a professional recruiter might be 15 seconds, maybe a minute at most. So they know, based on the positions that they have, the internships and full-time jobs, they could look at the first things they're going to be looking at are the major, your GPA, involvements, past internships, work experience, and they're going to know immediately whether they want to have a deeper conversation or if they want to schedule you for an interview. So they're just very efficient, I would say, at pinpointing the wording or the sections on your resume. That's why it's that short. Just kind of give you guys an idea of time the recruiter takes versus the time you take to perfecting that resume. So a couple boring stuff here. It's just the formatting for now, but as you can see on the right, that's our industry standard resume. And then you want to make sure it's easy to read as it can be. And the recommended fonts I usually recommend students to use are Times New Roman. You can use Calibri. And I think sometimes students like Arial, you could use that one as well. When it comes to the font size, never smaller than 10, because then it gets too small to read. And then never bigger than 12, because past 12, you're running the risk of pushing into multiple pages. So depending on how much experience you have, if you have a lot, you might want to use a smaller font size. If you don't have as much and you're trying to fill up that one page, you could use a bigger font size. So the margins, 1 inch or 0.5. So 1 inch is standard margins. 0.5 is what you call narrow margins. So that resume on the right, that is actually using narrow margins. So again, depending on how much experience you have at this point, you could adjust it to fill up or make efficient use of the page. So action verbs and keywords, you want to make sure you start those bullet points with action verbs like develop, maintain, work, process, craft, develop, participate. So those are words you want to start with. No personal pronouns, always one sentence per bullet point. And then I have this thing where for just one page. It doesn't have to be a page. It could be a page and a half. It could be 2 pages. The only time I recommend sticking to one page is, let's say you have a resume like the one on the right, and then your second page is like 2 or 3 lines. Then of course, I would recommend maybe try rewording a couple things just to kind of push it up, because then it's just a whole waste of a second page if it's only 2 or 3 lines. So match the descriptions with keywords. And I have this slide here regarding applicant tracking systems. Not sure if you guys have heard of that before, but essentially, to make it very simple to understand, it's software that the employer uses to track applications. Because apart from like the hiring manager or the recruitment team, that's a certain number of people. It could be 25, it could be 50. And then for any one company or position, they might have like maybe nationwide 50 internships that they need to fill or 50 full-time jobs. And for each one of those positions, hundreds of people could be applying. So they don't have enough manpower to physically go through each resume. So it's basically software. When you apply online, the software scans a resume and it tries to match it to the keywords in the job or internship description. So the recruiter might put in the software 65% match on words in the job description. And if 500 people apply, the software is going to give back maybe 100, let's say 200 resumes from the 500 resumes. They're not going through 200 resumes. Even 6 to 8 seconds per resume is too much, right? So they'll put those 200 resumes back in, and they might up the percentage from 65 to maybe like 85 or 90%. And then from the 200 resumes, they might get back 10 or 15 resumes. They'll quickly go through 10 or 15 resumes, cover letters, and then they'll maybe call 3 or 4 people for an interview. So that's roughly how it works. So to make it very simple again to understand, you are at a much higher, you have a bigger chance or a higher percentage of getting a callback for an interview if you tailor those resumes as much as you can to the words in the job or internship description. So using like the action verbs they use, like develop, maintain, process, work, and then not always just the first word. I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. You want to use industry-specific terms. So whether it's AutoCAD, Microsoft Office, technical stuff for your degree, those are the types of words you want to be using. This is a sample job description, and that part there in the box, that's what you want to really use. So the recruiter sometimes will have a very detailed job description, something that you could work with, and then sometimes they'll give you something very vague or not very detailed. But whatever they give you, just work with it and just tailor as much as you can. So you see how they have that keyword evaluate, they have develop, perform. Those are the words you want to use. You don't want to use synonyms, words that mean the same thing. People understand synonyms. The computer doesn't know it. They're looking for specific words. And then like further down in some of these bullet points, they have CAD or draft, return, testing. Those are the types of words you want to be using. So it should be something where the recruiter looks at the resume, they look at the job or internship description, and it should immediately click that this person is qualified for this role. So based on your work experience, volunteer work, projects, past internships, involvements with engineering orgs, if you're on the e-board or have another type of position, make sure you word those bullet points in a way that closely align with the responsibilities in the job or internship description. So here's another one, not as robust as this one, but again, anything they give you, that's what you just work with it. Oh, and this was just like a visual of what that looks like. So you apply for the position, it goes through the parser, that's really what that is, and matches it to the job description. And then in that last slide or that last box, you could see that they have that 9.8 match, 9.1 match, they have the check marks. So that's essentially what the software is doing. So you want to be in that, that criteria, like the accepted criteria. So you have a higher probability of getting through to like the recruiter actually having a physical version of your resume. And everyone who didn't meet the criteria or the word match, you get that very generic email 3 weeks after, a month after, where it just says, thank you for applying. But this time we're considering other applicants. And in reality, no one saw the resume. That was just a kickback from the software. So hope I'm framing this in a way that you guys could understand the importance of tailored resumes for every position that you apply for. So 2 different resume styles that are probably going to be more relevant to, engineering students or even just college students. And they are the reverse chronological resumes and the functional resumes. I'm going to assume most of you are going to be using a reverse chronological resume. A functional resume is more so for students or for candidates who have experiences that do not relate to, their degree or their program. So let's say someone was an accountant, they went to school for that, finance, whatever, and they worked in industry doing accounting or finance work for 10, 15 years, and they decided to come back to school to pursue an engineering degree, electrical, whatever. They would probably be using a functional resume versus a chronological one. So kind of go through a couple of these things. Chronological is best used when the experience relates directly to the job. It highlights consistency, most popular style. And then the functional one is for job changers, someone who has work history that is not consistent. So if they worked at this job for 2 months and then they switched jobs, they switched to a different position for 6 months, and then they weren't working for a year, and then they had another job for 5 months, functional resume might be more a preferred version of your resume. If you're someone who might need a functional resume, definitely book an appointment with me so we could talk about that more in depth. But if not, everything we're going to be talking about for the rest of the workshop today is going to be the reverse chronological resume style. So that's what this one looks like. As you guys could see, it's work experience there, volunteer experience, leadership. And then for each section, you have the most recent experience first. So if the student teller, January 2013 to present, that's the most recent experience. And then they worked at the Marriott Hotel in the past, May 2012 to August 2012. So the most recent one first for each section. This is an example of the functional resume. As you see, the skills are more so the highlight of the resume versus the work experience, which is at the bottom. So they're more so talking about their transferable or soft skills as it relates to the job or internship versus the work experience. So again, if you feel like you might need to use a functional resume, definitely book me for an appointment. So some standard resume components we're going to be going through: identification, objective, professional summary, education, all that stuff. And we will actually start with, from the very top, personal identification. So of course your name. Sometimes students forget to put their name, believe it or not. But remember, that's the first thing they should see. You don't have to put your full address because, nowadays with Google Maps, you could look up Street View. You can see the car in the driveway, the neighborhood. You never know, and you never want to introduce any bias into the recruitment process, which employers know they're not supposed to do. But people are people, so just play it safe. Just put city, state. You don't even have to put the zip code. So whether it's Miami, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Homestead, wherever you're currently located, put that. Of course, you put your phone number. If you're currently applying for positions, please make it a point to answer your phone. I know nowadays people never answer numbers that they don't know, just they go to voicemail. But if you're in the active job or internship search mode, you should be answering your phone for any number. If it's spam, you just hang up. If it's a recruiter, definitely that's going to be to your benefit. Professional email, you could use your FIU student email. You could use your Gmail if you have an Outlook one. But the main thing is just make sure the wording is professional. So don't have like a unprofessional email on your resume. And of course, you should have your LinkedIn, and just make sure you customize the LinkedIn link so it doesn't have all the numbers at the very end. So that's a feature in LinkedIn where you can make sure that your link is customized or specific to you. Some sample identifications you could use. So all three of these is personal preference. I usually recommend the one in the middle just because it is, you save more space. So if you're looking to fill up that resume as much as you can, this works better compared to this first one on top, just because you're taking up 1, 2, 3, 4 lines compared to the second one where you're using 1 line. And then the third one, they're just using 2 lines. So again, if you're someone who has, you're trying to fill up the page some more, the first one might be good. If you're looking to fit as much as you can on one page, the second or third one are also options. So before I get, so objective, right? Before I even get to this part, I've seen a trend in industry where employers are moving away from objectives. It's more so summary of qualifications or just starting with your education. So you could have an objective, you could have a summary of qualifications, or you could just start with your education. There's no right or wrong answer which one is better. But if you're it's personal preference, but if you're gonna use one or the other, there's certain things that you need to keep in mind. So in regards to the objective, if you guys could take a minute to read through both of these, which one do you think is this one if you were gonna be using an objective?
Probably the one that's more precise.
Which would be the second one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the first one is not a bad objective by any means. It's just very generic and vague. And the second one is very specific. So again, this person is using a tailored resume because this objective is saying that they're applying for the position of business analyst with DHL Express. So if you're going to use an objective, make sure it's specific to the position you are applying for. There's just an option there. Just make sure if you have an objective, it's very specific to the position. And the way you know what to say for an objective is reading through and analyzing the job or internship description. So the way that this person got the statistical research, learned theoretical knowledge, providing that dynamic customer service, they pulled all that information straight from the job description. Sample of summary of qualifications, the first one on top. I've seen more people using this one. So you're just kind of summarizing your skills and your experiences in a very straight to the point format in this. It's actually a tease or a preview of what is on the rest of your resume. So definitely an option there. You always use bullet points for the summary of qualifications or a professional summary. And then also on the bottom here, you have professional profile. So just another version of the sample summary of qualifications, but just to give you guys a preview or a visual of what those look like. And we have the education section. Just kind of follow this like word for word. I would say spell everything out. Don't put BS in electrical engineering, Bachelor of Science in Electrical, Bachelor of Science in Biomedical. If you're minoring in anything, put that. You put your GPA. The industry standard is a 3.0. If it's not a 3.0, you can decide to include it or not include it on your resume, but for sure guaranteed they are going to ask. And if they ask you, just make sure you're prepared to have that conversation and you're not winging it for the first time, because then it's going to be obvious. And then of course, put your expected graduation date. Don't put, January 2019 to present. That doesn't tell the recruiter anything, because depending on the internships or the full-time jobs that they have, those all play into the recruitment timeline. So they need to know where you are right now or when your expected graduation date is, to factor in or to consider you for different things. So just put the date, even if it's not guaranteed. August 2020, August 2021, December 2021, May 2022, whenever you graduate, you're expected to graduate, just put that date. If you've been on the dean's list, you could put that. Also, so for internships, you could also include a relevant coursework section. So you would put the major courses that you've taken up until this point. You could put the courses you're taking this semester, the courses you have registered for next semester. Just because when you start looking at the internship postings, employers need to know, or you actually see it in the internship description, the courses that they need you to be taking or to have taken before the internship. That's a really important section for internships. Full-time jobs, if you're in your senior year, you've already taken all the courses up until that point. You already have the degree at that point. So you don't need a relevant coursework section for if you're about to graduate or if you're looking for a full-time job. So
Sorry,
yeah.
one question. So you're saying that if we're looking for an internship, then yeah, put the relevant coursework. But if we're just looking for a full-time job, don't put anything.
Yeah, if you have it there for, if you're looking for a full-time job and you still have the relevant coursework, it's not going to hurt you in any way. But you could have otherwise used that space for maybe more bullet points for an internship section, project, work experience. But super important for internships.
Okay, thank you.
And let me actually show you guys what that looks like real quick. Hold on. You can make the connection. So this is a sample relevant coursework section. So these aren't the UCC courses. These are the courses that are relevant to the degree. And for the ones that you're taking this semester, right next to those in brackets, you could put fall 2020. And if you're registered for classes in the spring, you could include those. And then in brackets, you would put spring 2021. So you could embed it in education, or you could do a full-on relevant coursework section. There's no right or wrong way, but two options there, just so you guys can see what that looks like. Okay, can you see my back to the PowerPoint? Okay. All right, so is this, all right, so is this true or false? I will be able to get a job even though I don't have direct experience.
I'd like to say it's possible.
Yeah, it's true, because I'm sure you guys have seen that meme where it's need a job but need experience for the job, so like a catch-22. It's not necessarily true, because if you are looking for an internship, the whole point of an internship is to gain experience. So an employer is going to be looking at your volunteer experience, your past work experience, whether it's like McDonald's, retail, it doesn't matter, looking at involvements, looking at your major, your GPA, projects. So those aren't direct experiences, because the whole point of an internship is to gain engineering experience. And it's also true for an entry-level full-time job. The key takeaway there is entry-level. For upper-level positions or positions that aren't entry-level, you, of course, need direct experience. But entry-level jobs, especially for engineering, they're going to be looking at, number one, if you've had an internship, one or more. And then number two, they're going to be looking at things like research experience. Projects are going to be looking at your senior design. But the takeaway from this is you don't need direct experience for entry-level jobs or internships. So what do you guys think Barista or Roary would highlight in terms of transferable or soft skills? Just to kind of see if the connection is being made there. What would you say the top skills that he would have, or who he would need or she would need to work as a barista?
I would say effective communication.
Yeah. Interpersonal skills, meaning communication skills, customer service, organizational skills, multitasking. So hopefully you guys can see the connection there in terms of soft or transferable skills and not needing direct experience or direct work experience in order to obtain these positions. So getting into the detailed resume, of course, you want to use bullet points, don't use paragraphs. You want to be very detailed with the labeling. So the name of the company, city, state, how long you work there. If you're still there, it would be to present, what your position is. And then you want to start all of these with action verbs. So process, maintain, open, recognize, and then you just kind of fill in the rest. It's always better to, have much longer detailed bullet points than it is to have shorter, bigger ones, especially for engineering. Don't be hesitant to put technical language or technical verbiage into your bullet points, because the recruiter is going to more or less know what you're talking about, or they're going to have an engineer on staff who knows what that is. So just throw everything in there. If you don't be afraid to use the technical words or the technical stuff from your program or your major in those bullet points. And also make sure that you include numbers, outcomes if you can. Because kind of going back to the NACE career readiness competencies, we said if you're going into industry, they're results driven or outcomes driven. So if you have bullet points that say you increase something by a certain percentage, or you had a certain outcome over a 6-month period, those are always things that help you stand out. So you see in this one for volunteer experience, they had tutored an average of 5 to 10 middle school students per week in algebra, geometry, and economics, right? Sometimes I'll get students and on their resume, that bullet point would just be tutored middle school students. That doesn't tell me anything. So this bullet point, it's much more detailed, it's very specific, and you could even give yourself a +1 if this bullet point sounded something like this. Tutored an average of 5 to 10 middle school students per week on algebra, geometry, and economics, which resulted in an improvement in their grade from an improvement in a letter grade from a C to a B or from a C to an A over a 2-week or over a semester long period. So it's getting really detailed. And when I read that as a recruiter, I know exactly what you did and the results of that responsibility. So just remember, if you're ever in doubt, longer detailed versus short and vague. Some additional categories that you guys could have. Everyone should have a skills section. So definitely put your technical skills, Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, stuff for your major. And then, of course, if you are multilingual, you could put the languages you speak. You should have projects 100% if you've done research with those. If you are involved with the engineering orgs, if you're just a member, you could put like this. You could do it, you just list the org. If you are on the e-board, you could actually do it like this, where you put the position, how long you've been in that e-board position, and then bullet points that describe what you've done. So a couple options there for you guys, just so you could see it. If you have any certifications, any trainings, put those. If you've done the Peace Corps, you've done study abroad, you could put all that stuff. There's no limit to what you can include on your resume. So is this true or false? I need to write references available upon request at the end of my resume.
I would say it's true. I remember I got my resume reviewed. I had references and they had told me not to put them.
So it's false. So you don't want to put that. Just because references are never checked up until when they are seriously considering you for an offer. So that's usually after the second round interview, when their shortlist is maybe 2 people. That's when they're going to check references. So it's just a waste of space, and it's a pet peeve for employers that I've heard from. So just don't put that. References always go on a separate page called list of professional references. And what you want to include on that page is, of course, the name of the person, their position, the organization, phone number, email. You can even put the relationship. So whether it's director, colleague, supervisor, coworker, whatever that person was to you in that role. And the biggest takeaway from the references is make sure you reach out to that person ahead of time. So whether it's that your professor, a faculty member, or supervisor, because you never want them to be caught off guard to give you a reference, right? So just make sure you reach out ahead of time. Some additional things not to include on your resume. Don't put hobbies if you like swimming or basketball, football. Don't put your high school information after your freshman year. You don't even really need to include if you're a transfer student, if you have an associate's degree, because recruiters are only interested going to put that you're married or single. You don't have to put religion, political identity, of course, not your social security number, no pictures, especially for engineering students. Some majors might require that, but I would say the vast majority of positions don't need your picture. Yes, for the picture on your LinkedIn and your handshake profile, but not for the resume. Physical characteristics, 5'11", 195 pounds. No, don't include any of that stuff. Obviously not sexual orientation. If you have a disability, don't put any of that stuff. And no, don't put any previous terminations. There are a couple things that are different when it comes to working for the federal government. You have to put certain things on there. You have to put your salary, how much you made. You have to put the references or the contact information of your supervisor on the federal resume. But for private sector or industry, you never include any of these things. Some other stuff you could include: LinkedIn, personal website, projects, color if you want. The thing is, I never recommend going crazy with the resume in terms of like the style, making it look super nice, just because that's not the main takeaway that you want to, or the main feature that you want to sell to an employer. So kind of getting back to this resume or even this one, it's a very black and white, boring resume. And when everyone has a resume that looks like this, you might be thinking, how am I going to stand out from the crowd? And the main way you're going to stand out is the way you word those bullet points, because a recruiter is going to look at this and they're going to know exactly what to look for. And they're going to be reading through those bullet points to see if you have what they're looking for. So they're not going to be looking at the style, the color, the font. I mean, of course, you want to have an industry standard like this one is, but that's not the main thing that's going to get you the call back for the interview. Looking at this resume, do you guys think this is an okay resume, a good resume, not so good, needs some work? If you were a recruiter, what would your perspective on this resume?
I personally feel like it might be a little too much, especially with like the timeline and like it looks like a bar graph on the side.
Yeah, this is not industry standard. It's not a good resume. But the thing is, this person looks like they are qualified. They built their first website. They're studying software engineering. They've done web design and development. They have all these web technologies on the side. They know all like C++, Python, Perl. This is all their coursework. So obviously, this style of resume is not doing their experience any justice. So if this person went to a career fair, an internship fair, if they applied for a position, if it's like the first student that the recruiter is speaking with, they may take the time to look at this. But if you're like their 50th or 60th student that they've spoken to, they're probably exhausted at that point. So if you kind of throw this left ball or left field from this type of resume, it's going to be, they might come back to it. They're not going to be rude or anything, but they might put that to the side and they may never come back to it. So definitely don't do anything like this. Keep it very standard, industry standard, boring, format wise. And this resume is actually, looks like it's a template. So they probably got this from Word, or they went on a website. They did a Google search for resume templates. Don't use templates, guys. It's never going to do your experience any justice. This resume that you see, this is not a template. This is straight in Microsoft Word from scratch. Font size 10, narrow margins, spacing single, no spaces in between sections. This is just all from scratch in Word. And the same thing with this one. So to kind of summarize everything we've talked about so far in terms of the resume, easy to read, highlight your skills, make sure you segment or you compartmentalize your different experiences. Don't make the mistake of having a blanket experience section and then you have projects and internships, work experience, well, everything in this one big experience section, because that's going to be very confusing for a recruiter to identify or to know what type of experience is what in that one big section. Resume is a marketing tool. And then, of course, tailored resumes for every single position that you apply for. Just remember that. That's the main thing when it comes to applying for internships and full-time jobs. So before I move on to the cover letter, can I answer any questions regarding the resume? Okay, all right. Jump straight into the cover.
Yeah, I have a question. In my case, I am a master student, so they have to put MS or Master of Science instead the bachelor's.
Yeah, so you would put Master of Science in ABC degree, and then for your bachelor's, you would also put Bachelor of Science in XYZ degree.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So for the cover letter, I normally recommend it. Most career advisors recommend it. It's never going to be something where if you include a cover letter, they're not going to consider you for the position. It's just an additional document that maybe someone else didn't include that could be a deciding factor of whether they want to call you for the interview versus someone else, or whether they want to offer you the job over another candidate. So we're going to talk about this. I know some people get very intimidated by cover letters, but it's a very simple document to put together, and I'll show you why. So I just have this. It shows that you're a good match for the position, and it really gives you a chance to, in written form or in paragraph form, make the connection and let them know that you've done your research and you have a real interest in the position that you're applying for. So the format is actually business letter format. It's just the heading, opening paragraph, body paragraph, and the closing. Just those 4 sections. It's just as simple as that. And I'll show you guys what that looks like. And before you even start composing the cover letter, the two main sources that you're going to use to compose an effective cover letter is the company's website, so their main website, and then number two, the job description or internship description. So those are the two sources you really need to effectively craft it. So looking at the company's vision, mission, goals, all that stuff, background information, and then really getting into the details of the job or internship description to know what the position requires, what they're looking for, and you're basically going to be making the connection between what you've done and what the employer is looking for. So you're just in paragraph style making that connection for them. The key takeaway I want you guys to remember is the cover letter for a full-time job is, I'll make it very, just not to confuse you, the main thing for a cover letter for a full-time job is what skills and experiences do I have as a candidate, and how is that going to be of benefit to the employer. A cover letter for an internship is more so, again, it is what you have in terms of skills and experiences, but the wording you want to use for the internship cover letter is what you hope to gain in terms of your short-term career goals and your long-term career goals, and how this internship plays into it. Because as you know, the whole point of an internship is to gain experience. So if you make that connection in the cover letter, it really tells the employer that you have a vested interest in the internship, you've done your research, and you're also pitching some of those soft or transferable skills that you have and how it's going to be beneficial or going to help you in that internship. So just a slight difference there, very straight to the point with a full-time job, but just a bit more effort when it comes to the internship. So a visual of what the structure of the application letter or the cover letter looks like: opening, supporting details, goodwill closing. So I'm going to send everyone this PowerPoint so you'll have it. You can always refer back to it, but I'm going to skip this slide. So this is what the cover letter looks like essentially. Left, justified, and you want to start with your information on the top left. The date is the date that you apply for the position. And if you can find the name of the person or the recruitment manager or the hiring manager for the position, you could always include their information. Don't be afraid or hesitant if you can't find the name of the correct person. If you address it to the wrong person, it's never going to be a bad thing. But if you've done your research and you can't find out who it is, you could just put their recruitment team or their hiring manager. If you are able to find the name of the person, don't put their first name, last name. So don't put their John Doe, their Jane Doe. You want to use their Mr. Doe or their Miss Doe. Don't put the full name. And then jumping straight into the first paragraph, what you really want to discuss in this section is very, surface level details. The fact that you're a current student at FIU, your degree, when you graduate, where you saw the position, the job ID number, and then you want to kind of pitch really quickly how you would be of benefit to the employer, or if it's for an internship, what interests you about the internship, how does it play into your short-term goals or long-term goals. So it's just a quick preview in this first paragraph. Just remember, when it comes to cover letter writing, stay away from wordy. Don't be too wordy. Don't fluff it up. You want to be straight to the point. So a cover letter is never even going to be a full-on page from top to bottom. You're just going to get straight to the point, because the recruiter is probably not going to read the whole thing in depth. But if they do read it, you don't want to give them a whole essay to go through. The second paragraph is where you're going to have to put most of your effort into. It is the body paragraph. I won't read this whole thing. Again, I'm going to send this just because it's a lot to read there. But you're just connecting your experiences and your skills with what they have in the internship or job description. If you see that they're looking for a team player, you're essentially going to be saying that you are a team player, and these are the skills and experiences that I've had up until this point to support that claim. So you're going to be referencing things on your resume. You're not going to be copy pasting the exact same bullet point from your resume. You're just going to be talking about maybe a couple of those bullet points way more in depth to help the recruiter make the connection that you have the skill or the experience that they're looking for. So just remember, benefit-focused terminology, quantify if you can, is super important for engineering students. This person put in this last sentence, meetings that consisted of 50 plus members. So always support your claims in the body paragraph or in the cover letter in general. Don't just make a blanket statement saying that you are a problem solver, you are a team player. You really want to give solid experiences from your background to support the claim. Okay, and then the third paragraph, which is just a add-on to the second paragraph, you're just talking about the position some more, talking about the company, how you feel you would be a good fit. So it's just an expansion or an addition, like a sub paragraph to the second paragraph. And then the closing paragraph, very simple. You just restate your phone number, your email. Thank you so much for considering me for the position. Looking forward to hearing from you. And you just wrap that up in 2 or 3 sentences, and you just sign it with your name. So that's really what the cover letter looks like. And I'll actually show you guys this real quick. If you go to our website, and then you go to handouts and resources, and you scroll down to cover letter writing, this first link is a visual of how to construct it. So you can kind of go through all this. It walks you step by step how to format everything. And I think there's actually an example here that you can see of an actual cover letter. So you could read through that. And there is the outline, which was in the PowerPoint. That's this one, everything you need to say. And then this is the same thing that was in the first one, a sample cover letter, just so you can make the connection with how to format this. Definitely everyone's cover letter is going to sound different. It's going to look different. So definitely book me for an appointment if you want some more feedback or some help constructing a cover letter. Everything I talked about is just very general. It's difficult for me to be specific with what you need to say because it's going to be different for every student. But most of the things I did mention is that generally that's what you want to discuss. But definitely an appointment with either me, another career advisor, or coming in for drop-in hours. That's going to be might be helpful for this. So some do's of the cover letter: address it to a person if you can. Customize, just like with the resume. It's always a tailored cover letter for every position you apply for. Do your research, proofread, never more than a page. It's actually never even a full-on page from top to bottom. It's just mainly the middle section of the page. You can have a generic cover letter, but you tailor that cover letter for every position moving forward. So if company A is looking for a problem solver and most of your discussion in that cover letter are examples of you being a problem solver, and then company B is looking for a team player, you're going to want to tailor that new cover letter to the teamwork aspect more so than the problem solving. So you're going to have to kind of just see what you're applying for and sections that you need to tailor. Don't reiterate what's exactly on your resume. You're just expanding some more. Don't use bullet points. It's a letter, so you can if it makes sense, but it shouldn't be the way you have bullet points on your resume shouldn't be the same way you have them on your cover letters. It looks like 2 resumes. And then of course just be very aware of grammatical errors. So have someone proofread it, have someone spell check everything, and don't rely on Word or Google Docs to do that for you. So I think that was most of my stuff. Of course, hope you guys all know about Handshake, FIU.joinhandshake.com. You could sign in with your FIU, my FIU account details. That's where you could apply for jobs, internships, attend workshops, get the links for everything. And then that's also where you would be able to book me for an appointment. Just some numbers that I pulled from the last time I was in Handshake. You could see there are no lack of full-time jobs and internships, especially for engineering students. If there's any major right now that's doing well right now with the pandemic, it would be a STEM or an engineering major. There's some more services that we offer, grad school, all that stuff. And I have about 5 minutes, but I want to leave these last 5 minutes for any Q&A. If anyone has any questions, anything you weren't too sure about, I'm open to talking with you guys.
Yeah, I want to ask about how we present, let's say, for someone who's experienced in AutoCAD or has those technical skills with SolidWorks, for example, how we present that portfolio to an employer to be like, here, this is what I've been able to perform in the past. This is what I've been able to construct, just so you can see my portfolio, have an idea of how it looks like.
Yeah.
Would that be done on LinkedIn or through a website?
So that could be done through, of course, it should be on your resume. And it could be something like if you have a GitHub, and if some students have that, you could have them there. You could have it on your Handshake profile, on your LinkedIn profile. But the main takeaway is if you are trying to sell to an employer that you have this technical expertise, it should be very apparent in the way you word the bullet points. That's number one. But generally, of course, you want to include those skills in a skill section, which is, let me get back to this. So kind of like this, where you put the software or the technical things you know. So I know sometimes people like to put skills right up under projects. You could do that too. You could keep it at the end. But the main thing, or the main two things, is make sure it is in a skill section. And then in the way you word the bullet points, you want to kind of send that message. So this person worked with partner to design various parts and created a 3D model assembly using SolidWorks of a heat exchanger. That's saying that they have some kind of proficiency with SolidWorks. So that's one way you can do it. So skill section, and of course, in the way you word the bullet points. But if you have something like a link, like a GitHub, or a link to more detailed aspects of a project or an experience that you worked with, you could also include that stuff in the header. Yeah, so LinkedIn up here, and then the link, if you have it, you could include all that stuff there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions about the resume, the sections, the cover letter? Hopefully everything kind of made sense. You guys see the connection between the career readiness competencies, the importance of the tailored resumes, how to construct the cover letter. I know it was a very general presentation, but definitely everyone's case is going to be different. So definitely, if you have any concerns or you want some more specific guidance, of course, again, you can book me for an appointment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So like Joseph said, if anyone needs any further specific assistance with the resume, definitely please book an appointment with him. He's really helpful, and he's really good at teaching you these things, even things that I don't catch on my resume sometimes. So that assistance is always necessary. So that's pretty much it for the workshop. I want to thank Joseph for taking the time to present these tips and advice to us, and hope you learned something. Hope you were able to take some knowledge with you and apply it to your resume writing. And I'll see you on the next session, guys.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I think our next one might be interviewing skills. Is it? I think.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll see you guys for that workshop.
Sounds great. All right. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.